Okay guys, welcome back to another episode of Rotten Reviews. On this episode I take a look at the 1997 disaster film Volcano with Tommy Lee Jones and other forgettable actors of the time. This has a 50% on the tomato score, rotten, and a 31% on the audience score, rotten. And it is rotten. In my opinion, this movie, even when it came out new in 1997, was completely ridiculous, unbelievable, and rotten. Although we didn't use the word rotten back then, we would have just said this movie was ridiculous. It has so many bad volcano-like mechanics in it. We have characters who can stand next to flowing lava. We have characters who can breathe ash from a volcano and not even so much as cough a couple of times. We have, trees that can fall down and divert lava. We have other trees, palm trees, that can be standing up in flowing lava and still be just fine, not even on fire. We have so much ridiculous stuff going on here. Some of this same ridiculous stuff was also going on in the other 1997 volcano movie called Dante's Peak. It had some of the same type of ridiculous stuff in it, although this one is not as melodramatic. This one comes across as more of a straight-up disaster film. It's not trying to be a romance or anything like that, as Dante's Peak was trying to be a romance on top of that. And this one is just straight up trying to be a Los Angeles area disaster film like any one of the other numbers of them going back into the 1970s. This one is just, it fails to generate excitement. There was never a point in this movie where I felt like I was on the edge of my seat or I was worried about somebody surviving, because it's just non-tension storytelling. It's very insulting to the audience. You have the main character played by Tommy Lee Jones. He is some kind of upper level director of FEMA, and he actually at one point in the film asks a seismologist what magma is. And dumb questions like that. Now this is a 51-year-old Tommy Lee Jones playing that age of a character, and somehow he doesn't know what lava or magma is. He doesn't know what plate tectonics are. He needs to ask these questions just to have the other character, this female seismologist, deliver her exposition to him so that the really, really incredibly stupid audience would know what plate tectonics and magma was. It's really bad. I mean, I'm sorry, but even in 1997, a grade schooler knew what magma was and knew what plate tectonics were generally. So I'm sorry, it's just completely insulting to the audience. And this movie, it failed as a disaster movie because it never actually delivered enough tension to get you into that whole thing, where you're trying to go along with the characters and you're hoping they'll survive. You never get this kind of tension from it. You get more of a great disaster movie from the 1970s earthquake movie, for example. This is a complete fail, and it's insulting to the audience, and in a lot of ways it's worse than Dante's Peak, and in some ways it's better. At least it doesn't try to divert half the film into a romance, because the main character, Tommy Lee Jones, he's 51, and the seismologist character, she's in her mid to late 20s. So it would be kind of really bizarre if they did spend the time to try to develop a romance there. They don't, thankfully. They hint at it, but it doesn't develop into a romance. And most of the movie is spent on this FEMA character, Tommy Lee Jones. His idea isn't to evacuate Los Angeles when it's discovered that a volcano is erupting beneath it. No, don't evacuate Los Angeles, but spend all your effort just trying to move concrete road barricades around to divert the flow of the lava, and everything will be fine. And apparently, as the plot develops, once they get enough concrete road barriers into place to divert the lava safely to somewhere, then the city is saved, and it's a happy ending, even though the volcano is still going on in Los Angeles. But no, don't don't evacuate anybody or anything. They can just go back to work after you divert some lava around. It's completely stupid and insulting. And in fact, in one scene, there's a character that slowly dissolves into the lava while he has a helpless look on his face. And he's like half buried in the lava, but he's just kind of saying, "Help me," and he's like, it's completely ridiculous. It's worse than Dante's Peak that did the same type of stuff with acid and grandma wading into the acid-filled lake in Dante's Peak. This one goes over the top. It's even worse. There's a scene in which Tommy Lee Jones rescues, I guess it's his daughter from a falling building. The building actually falls on them, but somehow they're able to dust themselves off and come out of the rubble. I'm sorry, I'm having a hard time keeping a straight face going as I talk about it. There's also, as in Dante's Peak, a small scene in which a dog is just rescued in the nick of time from the flowing lava. It's a little bit different, but it's the same thing. And the dog is shown at the end. The dog is like with Don Cheadle's character at the end is part of the happy ending where the dog survived. And it's like straight up taken just like the scene in Dante's Peak, straight up ripped off of Independence Day, also from 1997, or was it 96? In either case, it's that stupid dog trope where the dog just barely leaps out of the way of the lava at the last second, and that's supposed to keep us on the edge of our seat. I'm having a hard time keeping a straight face just talking about it because it's just become comedy to me. So let's get into the actual rotten reviews and see, even in 2019, what people think of this. We have one from April 16th of 2019, 2 stars. There is nothing credible about this film. First responders would never be able to stand 10 feet away from flowing lava. The fumes alone would overcome them. I like a good disaster flick as well as anyone, but I'd like to be at least 20% believable. The only reason I didn't give it 1 star is because I love Tommy Lee Jones. Yeah, 2 stars. I'll give this 1 star. I gave Dante's Peak, I think, 2 stars, maybe 1.5, 2. This one is just clearly 1 star. It never gets above 1 star. There's not even any tension in this, even in a short amount of time. For a disaster movie, you get no tension, so it's a complete fail, aside from all the ridiculousness you're expected to believe could happen. Again, it does what Dante's Peak does with the ash being treated more like snow, and you can breathe it and everything just fine. Let's move on. 3.5 stars. Good movie, could be better though. Yeah. 2.5 stars. Fairly good movie. Feels low budget though. No, actually, in its day, it wasn't low budget. But yeah, it feels today like a complete fail in that regard. 3 stars. Feels like a sequel to Earthquake 1974. Yeah, exactly. No, it's 1 star. But yeah, that's what I get from this. It feels very much like the 1970s earthquake disaster movie. But that movie actually had tension because I saw it when it was a newer film at the time as a kid. And that earthquake movie actually had tension. And I think it had a sequel too, if I'm not mistaken. And in any case, those old 1970s disaster movies, completely stupid, yeah. But they actually delivered a sense of tension. This one doesn't. At no point did this movie make me feel in 1997 when I was 27 that, there was something to lose in the characters, that I was on the edge of my seat, so to speak. Now, I saw this when it was out on home video on VHS, luckily, because at the theater, I would have been bored. There was no tension in this. There was no feeling that, I'm worried about the fate of these characters. And it's so stupid because at one point, the seismologist goes underground, like into the storm sewers of LA, and it's completely contrived how, this poison gas and flame comes up from this gigantic chasm that's underneath LA that looks like it's a bottomless pit, and it comes up and just coincidentally, it does all this damage and explodes all these manholes and burns all these people on the street, but yet her character somehow, she doesn't get a scratch. It's completely contrived, and after seeing that, you don't have any tension. There was tension until that scene, and then you realize, yeah, this is completely stupid. All the main characters are going to have plot armor. They're not going to get a scratch, and conveniently, the flame and the lava is always going to miss them. So you just deflated everything that this could have been as a disaster movie. Um, It was a complete fail. 4.5 stars. Volcano is the more ridiculous, more fun, and more exciting bigger brother of Dante's Peak, and therefore one of those 90s catastrophe actioners to enjoy without a lot of thinking, though the amateurish attempt at the end to slip a racism theme into the plot. Also, there was a particularly barbaric scene I would rather have unseen. Well, they do touch upon, at the very end, there is a scene in which a small child looks out upon all the people on the street covered by ash, and the child says, "Oh, they all look the same now." And that's like the way they do it. It's obviously some kind of statement that, yeah, in the disaster, all the black people, the white people, the Hispanic people, etc., they're all the same now, covered by ash. I see that humans are all the same. That's the thing you get from it, but it's over the top stupid the way it's done, and it's kind of like shoved in there as a statement about racism. And yeah, it makes sense because 1997 Los Angeles, or even 96 Los Angeles, you weren't too far off from the LA riots in the early 90s. Um, so it's like they tried to shoehorn something in there on that too. So yeah, the reviewer's mentioning that, so I'll mention it. It's kind of stupid the way the kid does it, and it's a little too obvious. 0.5 star. I used to like this movie when I was a child. Now that I'm grown up, this is the worst disaster movie I've ever seen. Why end the movie on a happy note when there is an active volcano in the middle of the city? This whole movie was weird. Yeah, the movie ends with a happy note, a happy mood, like everything's fine, and it shows the volcano continuing to erupt in downtown Los Angeles with this huge plume of smoke and stuff going off into the sky. But yet, everything's fine because they just moved some concrete road barricades around to divert the lava into like the storm drain system or something. Um, so everything's fine, people. It's life's going to go on now. Everybody can go back to work. Yeah, sure. Don't mind the volcano just sticking up in the middle of the city, going off continuously. It's complete. It is weird. It is weird, and yet the movie presents it as a happy ending where everything's fine. I don't know what to say. 3 stars. There are better disaster movies than this. It's okay, and Tommy Lee Jones is quite good, but there's nothing special about this film. It's the sort of film you watch to pass 2 hours. I'll disagree. Tommy Jones is not good in this. There's a particular scene in which he's discussing his plans as a FEMA director or manager with others. And it looks like in the middle of his dialogue, he just couldn't remember what he was supposed to say, so he kind of ad-libs it, and the other characters go along with it, and it's noticeable to me. So no, I disagree. Tommy Lee Jones actually wasn't really into this. He didn't have his lines memorized, and it shows. And there's at least one scene where you can see this. It's obvious. Let's move on. We're in January of 2018 on these reviews. 2 stars. It's not good, but for some reason I couldn't not watch it a few times. Well, good to be you. 3 stars. A good movie with decent visuals. No, that's why we're here. 2.5 stars. It hasn't aged particularly well, and on a rewatch years on, it's not as good as I remember it. A disaster movie which doesn't reach the heights of others. That's a review from October of 2017. I completely disagree. I watched this when it was brand new release on home video, a rental, VHS rental. I considered it dull and boring, by the time it was finished, and that was like long ago. So don't say it's because it aged badly. No, it's just like not a good disaster movie. It doesn't have any tension. 4 stars. Volcano is what disaster movies should be. Ultimately, while a movie possesses a main character and commercial plots that occupy the throne of American cinema at its heart, it's an ensemble feature about how people come together to conquer impossible challenges. Tommy Lee Jones does more than a serviceable job of a dissatisfied servant of the public trapped behind a desk, a man from a small Midwestern town doing what he can to raise his daughter. This summary, I don't know where they're going with this. Nothing here suggests 4 stars. Yeah, Tommy Lee Jones is a FEMA director that's on some kind of vacation. I don't recall. He's from the Midwest, but he's in Los Angeles for some contrived reason, and he's got to, take charge of the first responders. And that's the other unrealistic thing here. He's like not even from the area. He's like from another place, but he's somehow in FEMA, and all the first responders just suddenly view him as the authority on, responding to a volcano erupting in Los Angeles. It doesn't make any sense at all, and the movie just goes right on over that like it's not a problem. It is ridiculous. 4 stars. A volcano in downtown Los Angeles. Why not? I've seen worse. It's fun. Well, the only cool part was where they showed the La Brea tar pits like kind of acting up and stuff. And, it had tension at that point, and it had tension up and until, they go down, the seismologist gets up in her fire retardant suit and goes down into the storm drain and sees the bottomless pit, but then magically the stuff comes out of it and doesn't kill her, but it does all the other stuff with the manholes. And right from that point, all the tension is gone, the believability's gone, and even watching that on VHS at the time, that's when I lost it with me. I knew this thing was a dud. Um, so yeah, the tension was gone so quick. Without tension, you don't have a disaster movie. What you have could be a comedy or a parody, but again, there's no comedy or parody in this. It's played off as though this tension is still there, but there is no tension. 3 stars. The acting is bad except for Jones. The story is okay, but the bad acting really highlights the weak story. That being said, the events of the film are pretty intense, especially when the lava starts flowing. Overall, it's a typical disaster movie with a good leading actor. Nah, it's worse than typical. Half a star, bad. In one scene, a fire truck rolls over, launching one fireman in an odd trajectory with obvious wires. In another, a giant lava flow is stopped with a few dozen fire hoses. Why hasn't anyone thought of that in real life? Laugh my ass off. In another scene, a building is falling on a girl and little boy, who of course just stand there and scream, so Tommy Lee Jones runs towards them from, let's say, 100 yards away and pushes them out of its way. Yes, he saves them from a falling building by pushing them over a few feet. Yeah, that is literally in the movie. It's one of many things that I could have gone into, and it's just completely stupid. Again, if there was any tension, stuff like that just completely removes all of it. 3 stars. It's good movie to watch. 3 stars. I'd all right. Good acting though. 2 stars. An easily forgettable disaster flick. Yeah, I forgot it like by the next day in 1997. That's how forgettable it is. 1 star. Tommy Lee Jones fights off a volcano in this silly, predictable disaster flick. No, actually, Tommy Lee Jones just fights off lava flows down the streets of a part of downtown Los Angeles, which apparently all you need are some road barricades, some concrete dividers, and some fire hoses, and then you can fix this problem with just fire hoses, people. I mean, why didn't they think of that on the Big Island of Hawaii? Couldn't they have just brought in fire trucks? I mean, come on. 3.5 stars. Special effects are laughable by 2016 standards, but it has an interesting storyline. Plenty of action, and Tommy Lee Jones being the boss he is. Actually, he's not much of a boss. How can you be a boss when you forget your damn lines and ad-lib and it shows? Like, you're a boss? You're a boss at just collecting your paycheck, I guess. Please. Half a star, May 15th, 2016. Really bad film. It makes the likable Dante's Peak look Citizen Kane in comparison. I'll agree, Dante's Peak is better. Dante's Peak, for me, failed because not only did it have unbelievable stuff, but it tried to be a romance that didn't work. That was the bad part, really. This one's not trying to do that, but it just flat out fails to have any tension. Right from the beginning, it blows all the tension out of there. And so you have a disaster film with no disaster, really. 2.5 stars. This movie feels funny. Tommy Lee Jones is a big star in 1990s. This isn't a big destruction disaster flick. It's, however, pretty entertaining, well, at least 65% of the time. The other 35% is either, I think, is a bonus to the movie, a boring part, or just problem solved part. I think the movie could be like 20 to 30 minutes instead of 1 to 2 hours. Well, yeah, because it's 1 to 2 hours. It is actually 1 hour and 42 minutes of Tommy Lee Jones basically showing you that fire hoses and concrete dividers can fix the volcano problem. These are the solutions to a volcano. But yeah, you could have shown us that in 20 minutes probably. 3 stars. Not as good as I remember, but real solid. Yeah, real solid. Lava's not really solid, is it? I mean, when lava falls on top of you, it's just like hot like liquid, like hot soup, right? It's not rock or anything like that. Like, it's just one of the unbelievable things in this movie. Half a star. Worst movie ever. The writer should try to live in volcano area. Nothing you can do when volcano erupts, writer. The stupid volcanologist said Mount St. Helens eruption 27,000 times bigger than Hiroshima. It's only 1,600 times. How come this movie has better score than Sandler's movie? Yeah, I'll agree. I think the volcanologist did say that Mount St. Helens, the force of the eruption, was 27,000 times bigger than Hiroshima. No, it wasn't. And actually, Hiroshima wasn't that big as an atomic bomb. I mean, yeah, it was a big bomb, but yeah, 1,600 times, that's a stretch even. There's just stuff the movie does that's just nonsensical. All disaster movies do nonsensical things, but this one's just particularly bad and obvious because there's not enough tension to overlook all the ridiculous parts. The tension is just non-existent, and so it's easy to find the other stuff. It just sticks out so easily. 1 star. It has Tommy Lee Jones as great as ever, and action that won't leave you disappointed. But its thin script and lack of storytelling doesn't make for a good movie, and many people should go with the year's other volcano movie, Dante's Peak. Yeah, you might try to go. I would go with Dante's Peak because it's actually so bad that it's good in some ways. You can laugh. I actually, in Dante's Peak, laughed out loud at parts of it. Literally, I was laughing out loud, and I wasn't expecting that. But this movie won't give you that. So, yes, I would go with Dante's Peak because you crack a beer, even or whatever your choice of fluid, and you enjoy Dante's Peak, and you're gonna laugh out loud and find it as a comedy. So that's, yeah, it is just straight up more enjoyable than this. 2.5 stars. Exciting and action-packed. Volcano is an explosive disaster film. When the La Brea tar pits erupt into an active volcano, the police and fire departments fight a desperate battle to contain it before it destroys Los Angeles. Featuring Tommy Lee Jones and Heish, Don Cheadle, and Gabby Hoffman, the casting is pretty decent. Also, the special effects are quite impressive and do an incredible job at conveying the awesome power and destructive force of the volcano, but the script is terrible with poorly written. I'll disagree on the special effects. Basically, all the effects are put into just showing the lava flow. The lava flow looks realistic, sure, it's not good or bad, but just how the lava flow is affected by things like overturned buses and trees and stuff is so bad that it's not laughable bad, though. The thing about that, Dante's Peak, it did it in ways that made you laugh. This isn't laughable, it's just corny and boring. There's no tension to it. 3 stars. It's a very basic thriller when it comes to characters and their development, plus the fact that it's a disaster movie doesn't exactly have anything to highlight other than the disaster. Thankfully, some of its main leads, peril scenes, and effective music manages to make it entertaining enough. I'm going to stop there. It's not. It's not all that. In fact, I will mention one thing. Okay, there is one laugh out loud moment. There is a scene in which somebody's bright idea to divert the lava flow is to overturn like a Greyhound bus onto the, or like a city bus into the lava flow to divert it somehow. Needless to say, that doesn't work out too well. But in trying to do that, they need to push the bus over. So before they push the bus over, a whole squad of police officers draws their pistols and executes the tires on one side of the school or one side of the bus. And it comes across as funny because it looks like at first that they're shooting at the lava flow to try to stop it. And it's that kind of stuff that's like laugh out loud that Dante's Peak does better. Now, if there had been more of that in this movie, it'd be worth seeing just to laugh at it. But it is funny watching the cops like shooting their pistols. The most action from a police squad you can see in this movie is them just firing off their pistols like maniacs at the tires on a passenger bus. It is funny, but that is the only one moment that might be considered laugh out loud funny. The rest of it's not. 1 star. Everything you hate about big action blockbusters and the friggin' volcanoes underground. Tommy just needed a paycheck. Yeah, he couldn't even be bothered to remember all of his lines at times. So he got paid, yes. 3 stars. However stupid it may be, Volcano succeeded in keeping me gripped to the screen, thanks to some very good special effects and a terrific performance by Tommy Lee Jones. However, the film's lack of intelligence is hard to go unnoticed. Just no. I'm sorry. I don't know why you think Tommy Lee Jones did a great job, but yeah, there is no intelligence in this film. It insults your intelligence. 2.5 stars. Volcano attacks Los Angeles in this cheesy disaster effect or flick. Yeah, and you know it's funny. The attack kind of continues, but the movie still ends on a happy note, so figure that one out. Half a star. We're in February of 2015 on this review. So bad that it was simply awful. There was nothing redeeming or even campy with this woefully dead serious mess of horrific CGI and scenes that were just jaw-droppingly, dumbfoundingly bottom-of-the-barrel dreck. A disaster film indeed, in the worst possible connotation of the word disaster. Egads, this was dreadfully embarrassing for all involved. Yeah, it was embarrassing when I saw Don Cheadle in this. He probably, like, if he hasn't forgotten he was in this, he's probably wishing people would forget. He looked pretty bad showing up in this, him and that dog. It was just off-putting. We're in 2014 now in the review. 3.5 stars. Tommy Lee Jones saves the day in the other Volcano movie. Another solid disaster porn flick. No, it's not solid. Even the 1974 earthquake is more authentic as a disaster movie than this. 2.5 stars. I personally liked Dante's Peak better, but they're both in the same league of mediocrity. No, Dante's Peak is more laugh out loud funny. I recommend that over this one. 3.5 stars. Wow, haven't seen this for years. Finally gotten around to seeing it for the first time in 10 to 15 years. It's an alright movie, completely over the top and ridiculous, but it's one of those 90s big budget summer type movies that you just got to leave your brain at home and enjoy the action. 7 out of 10. It sounds like you're describing Independence Day, but it's not all that. Sorry, this is a 1-star movie. 1 star. A disaster film starring Tommy Lee Jones about a volcano. Volcano sounded like it would be some cheap fun. Although I wanted to watch Volcano for a cool-looking volcanic eruption, the majority of the first part of the film focuses on how it affects the sewer systems. It shows the chaos of the characters in downtown Los Angeles attempting to deal with sudden explosions, gas leaks, and acts of looting. Eventually, it ends up having small pieces of rock fragmentations on fire hurtling into cars. Yeah, there's not much volcano in this. There's lava flow, there's earthquake, there's sewer gas eruptions for manholes, and there are some chunks of rock falling on cars. But really, no, no, no. If you want volcano, at least Dante's Peak had a damn volcano. It took a long time to show up. It took like 56 minutes into Dante's Peak for the volcano to make its appearance. But when it did, it was all there, and you got your volcano. In this one, you get a parting shot of the small volcano in downtown Los Angeles as the happy ending comes to roll into the credits. Yeah, figure that one out. 2 stars. Volcano is an utterly preposterous and too silly to enjoy. It's terrible even by disaster movie standards. Yeah, I'll agree. 2 stars. This movie is so bad it's good. The acting surprisingly is good while the plot isn't so much. I really like Anne Heche in this. No, the acting's not good either. And it's not so bad that it's good. That would be Dante's Peak. This one has nothing to laugh at. It's just boring. 1.5 stars. Forgot how bad this movie was. Tommy Lee Jones worst. Bad acting, bad cast, bad script, bad special effects, bad storyline, bad one-liners. Good idea for a movie. Yeah, you know, it was a good idea for a disaster movie. Certainly no more bad of an idea than another earthquake-type movie. Most of this was an earthquake-type movie. But yeah, this was just the most piss-poor way to do it. 2 stars. Cheesy disaster movie with cringe-worthy dialogue. However, I did like the effects used of the lava, the volcano, etc. All of it looked very realistic. Well, yeah, the lava did look passably good and realistic. I've seen real lava flow. We have plenty of video from Hawaii, even from this year and last year. It looked passable as lava flow. 3 stars. An entertaining movie with Tommy Lee Jones as its star. The special effects are good. I'm sorry, I don't know that you're talking about Volcano. Maybe you were talking about Men in Black. I don't know. Anyway, 1997's other volcano movie, depending on which one you prefer. I prefer Dante's Peak. You can laugh at that one. 50% on the tomato meter. I don't know how it got so high. I would say I'm surprised the critics didn't bring it down to 25. 31% on the audience score. I think that's fair. Yeah, I think that's fair. So anyway, I will see you on another episode of Rotten Reviews.